All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lew Bryson. Plus, this week's special guests, Robert and Jonathan Likarish, who I will let your hosts give a more formal introduction to in just a moment. Real quick before I turn things over. As always, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co and just want to point out a few ways that you can interact throughout the show today. So on your right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always great to see that. If you have a question at any point about the show, about Robert, Jonathan, any of our hosts, there's a little button at the bottom that says ask a question. So just hit the button, type your question in down there, and I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show today. And last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join in on the show. There's a share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lew, I'll turn things over to you now.
Thanks there, Will. You're like a little tiny bunny rabbit of love, the way you help us out.
Today.
Yeah, today. Just today. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Duffy, and I'd like to describe what I do in my own words, but who better than Mr. Lew Bryson?
Oh, boy.
Martin Duffy. I owe thanks also to a couple of very good friends. That's good friends with Lew. Yeah. Marty Duffy, U.S. brand representative, Glencairn Glass, has been my travel companion, my confidant, my soulmate on a number of trips over the last few. I might be adding a few past few years, as we did a fun series of whiskey presentations with the droll Tom Johnson of Aroma Academy. He isn't just a good friend and a solid drinking buddy, he's also authority on Pennsylvania distilling history. Going into the next acknowledgement, but
yeah, why not?
I am a former master of whiskey for Johnny Walker and the Classic Malts, national brand ambassador at one point for Benedictine and B&B. Co-producer Chicago.
Wait, you were repping B&B at the same time?
Yeah.
You've never mentioned that.
That's why I've been holding up.
This is a whole new dimension.
Dude, that's why I've been holding up all this time.
Wow. I thought it was just all you could get.
B&B right there.
Oh,
which actually outsells Benedictine like 5 to 1.
I drink that stuff as is.
I know, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and then what else did I do? Oh, and for the last 7 years, I've been the sole brand representative for Glencairn Crystal. What's a little scepter I've been presenting.
Wow, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
How about that thing for the Crystal King?
Yeah, the Crystal King. All right, and now over to Dusty Rhoades.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Marty. I'm Liz Rhoades. I'm actually not doing my little intro today because I'm actually going to talk about something super cool. I'm going to bring some Rhoades realness right now. And my Rhoades realness is probably something that maybe out in the audience that you've observed. I'm kind of an anomaly in this Brady Bunch situation that you see in the screen. Yeah, Marty. I have watched the Brady Bunch. I've seen it. Love it. Yeah.
It dates you though. I don't understand.
But the truth is I'm an anomaly and it's okay. Although I feel very loved and respected in this Brady Bunch situation. And the future, maybe that could change though. I don't know. That could be cool, huh? Wow. So I'm basically just going to give a quick little shout out to something super cool. In general, I think that our industry could be more diverse and inclusive. I hope everyone here would agree, everyone watching would agree. And I know a lot of people out there do agree. And that's why I am super excited. Will's going to put up a link, I think, in the chat. The more diverse and inclusive we are, bringing in different ideas, different, life experiences, different backgrounds, I think it would all elevage See what I did there, guys?
Well
Elevage.
played. Well
I
played.
like she speaks French.
I saw what you did with your mouth, and that was kind of funny. Look, you look like that right there. That was awesome.
But the fact is, it's not always, there's a barrier to entry, I feel like, in our industry, and that's about to change. Insert in the Step Up Foundation with specifically the Good Deeds Spirits. We talked about this a few months before. We had Johnny J on to chat about the Vatted Malt Whiskey Project. And that's now finally coming to the marketplace next Friday. And I'm super excited about it. Like I said, this is going to be great for industry. I'm really excited for the future. And I'm really proud of the folks that did this and put time and energy and effort. And by the way, the whiskey is delicious. So don't click my link. Say click my link to my website, but don't do that today. Click the link to Steelbox, Good Deed Spirits, Vatted Malt. Okay, that's me, Lew.
Thanks, Liz. I would just add, all the money's going to the foundation, correct?
Yes.
When you buy the bottle, so get out there and buy the bottle. I'm actually doing an online tasting of this today at 5 p.m. and I'm pretty excited about it. Some really neat people involved. What's that?
Did you buy that bottle?
No, they sent it to me. What are you kidding? It's a little tiny bottle.
Great.
Look how tiny it is.
50 ml, but there's 1,000 bottles and it goes on sale next Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
So,
Sorry.
I'm Lew Bryson. I write about whiskey. I'm plugging this book. I've been thank you. I edited Whisky Advocate for 20 years. I now write for the Daily Beast. I'm just keeping it short, because we're compressing here. The other book, Tasting Whiskey, always good. And today I am drinking the new X from Glenmorangie. And it says it's made for mixing, but because I'm such a rebel, I'm drinking it neat. So that's my thing today. That's what I got, and let's go on to Ironroot.
He's a rebel.
Just a crazy man.
Don't let them tell you what to do.
Well,
That's
ladies
the main reason, right?
This week we have the privilege of having two young men from the great state of Texas who have founded their own distillery. I never heard of them before until I read this book. Texas whiskey. But they've built a wonderful reputation for themselves. I think are you the most northern distillery in Texas?
At least whiskey distillery. There might be a rum one in Lubbock, but I don't know.
I mean, it really doesn't matter. You guys are like in Texas, which is a far south state, but still, it's kind of cool that you're kind of up north. Not too far outside of Dallas, if you kids are going to visit Texas. Anyways, from Ironroot Republic Distilling, and I like that, Ironroot Republic. When you look at it, it kind of looks like an old movie studio. Iron Republic Productions, kind of like that. Anyways, we have Jonathan and Robert Likarish, the Willy Wonka's two favorite distillers. Hi, guys. How are you?
How's it going?
Boys, if I may call you that.
Boys, I think this man's out of sight.
I'll say boys.
I tell you what.
It's Lance.
That's great. That's two references to that song in 2 weeks. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Yeah, very good. Wow. Very low bar and
Yep.
Hey, look at that. Honey, look what I did this week. So gents, you guys have actually a really fascinating story. You got a lot of stuff going on, not only in the past, which we'll dig up and expose, much to your chagrin, but also what you guys have in store that you're going on. That's been going on, but also going to be revealed in the future. So why don't we get started first, just with your own personal histories. Jonathan, Robert, whoever wants to go first. How you boys, what were you guys doing before you got into distilling? And then what got you into freaking distilling?
if I could tweak that just a little bit,
Maybe.
usually we only want to know essentially what you've been doing since you became adults. But in this case, I'm really kind of interested in what your parents did
Oh,
previous,
Lou.
because you
Oh,
no,
you
shut
mean-
up, don't be
You
that way.
mean for a job. Oh,
Yes.
I thought you meant.
Yeah, I want that whole. I want to hear that whole Butte connection. So
Yeah, you don't want to know parenting styles, is what?
no,
just be
no,
clear.
Huge
Wow.
fan of parenting
How the two
style.
boys were conceived. That's what I was thinking. You're getting at. Well, let's go right to your birth, your conception.
especially if it was.
Well, it was a dark night, Marty.
Now, Robert, you're the oldest, are you not?
I am not. I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
you're the youngest, Jonathan. See, I just
Thank you for that, Marty.
yeah.
Checks in the mail. Checks in the
Yes.
mail.
So, Jonathan, why don't we start with you first, because you can actually fill us in on how Robert was conceived. Go ahead.
All right.
Yes,
Well,
I
so-
hope
Background of parents. So my parents are both from Montana, a town called Butte, Montana, which is home of the Copper Kings. So we've got some friends back there that have distilleries and sell malt up there now, which we're big fans of, both the distillery and the malt up there. But that's kind of our first connection to copper. Kind of started with our parents being from this town that was known for its copper production. My father is a metallurgical engineer, and so he deals with mostly non-ferrous metals on the mining side. So he's worked in copper refineries, zinc refining, multiple industries there. My mother went to school she was a speech pathologist by trade. And then she, through most of her career, dealt with preschool age children with disabilities. So we always say that she's still doing that, but because she works with us.
I was
that's
going to say there's some irony there. You said non-ferrous, but yet your name is
Iron.
There is irony. Yes.
and you said irony. It's like a triple layered thing.
Ooh.
fact.
Inception podcast. Watch out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, am I in a dream or in a dream of a dream?
Marty, you should know gingers don't dream.
Gingers don't dream. That's a tragic little title.
They just have nightmares.
Gingers don't dream. All right, go ahead there, Jonathan.
All right. So that's kind of the background of my parents. We'll get to how the name is ironic in a little while. So I was actually born in El Paso, Texas. And so we lived in many places in Texas, grew up mostly in Texas. Rob was actually born in New Jersey. So we were out on the East Coast for a bit, made our way back through Illinois, back to Texas. My dad always promised me as a child that we'd move back to Texas so I could marry a Texas girl. And so that's what I did. Did
you start this at like age 3 or something?
Probably 5. Yeah.
I would just like to interject. I live in Jersey now, but I'm from Illinois, and I just want to put it out there that Jersey and Illinois chicks are pretty cool too. That's it.
Enough said.
I've heard such things.
All right.
I agree.
I've used up all the chicks here in Illinois. I got to go to New Jersey. I've worn my
Well, I
my
can't
welcome out
speak to
here.
Illinois, but living right beside the state, I can confirm.
Oh,
There we go.
Jersey. All right, go ahead.
So let's see, skip to school. So basically I did industrial engineering, biomedical engineering masters, and then part of a mechanical engineering degree before we started this. And basically what interrupted me from staying in a kind of engineering field was Robert. So
It sounds like It's a Wonderful Life. Is that?
yeah.
Exactly. That damn fool, Robert, he flew all the way in from the snowstorm. That's
So essentially, Robert he did international business studies, and then he did went to law school, and it was in the middle of law school in which Robert decided he didn't want to be a lawyer. So he only had one semester left. He told us at
Really?
Christmas
I
dinner.
did graduate.
Wow.
I did graduate.
He graduated.
Wow.
He refused to take the bar, but he did graduate. So he told us Robert's real non-confrontational. So he sat down at Christmas dinner and then told us all while we were sitting there during the main course that he didn't want to be a lawyer. Mom didn't die of a heart attack at that point in time, which was a good thing. But my dad jokingly asked at that point in time, he said, well, what are you going to do with your life? You're going to go start that distillery you've been talking about for a while.
Wow, really?
Robert-
Right then he said that?
Robert didn't take it as a joke.
Wow.
So,
All right.
yeah,
Sidebar.
Yeah.
See what I did there? See what I
Yep.
I like it.
Oh,
Yep. You're
nice,
getting
yeah.
very literary here, Liz.
Yeah.
Word
did?
play and now a
Hang on
sidebar.
today, but what was the dinner? I want to know. What did you guys have?
I'm going to guess it was
really
Fish
rubbing
were you
off on
going
you.
for?
Wait.
probably prime rib
Rib.
is
Okay.
back then.
Okay.
Robert, if it makes you here's a question
Oh
for
my
you,
God, that
Robert.
was such a Marty question if I ever heard one. Wow.
What's the difference? What's the difference, Robert, between a lawyer and a catfish?
Oh God.
No
One's
idea.
a bottom-dwelling scum sucker, and the other's a fish.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing you got out of there. All right.
Yeah,
I dated a
people
lawyer.
do appreciate me a lot more than they used to. I don't know.
Of course. You know,
Yeah, until they have a car crash.
the one character eaten in Jurassic Park, a lawyer. Well, not the one, but one of the main ones.
That's- There were a few.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
So,
excuse
I guess
me,
I'm
Miss
gonna have to
Prime
be
Rib.
Liz and bring it
We'll
all
get
right
to
back.
it when we get to it.
All right. So
So
The
we've got this.
dinner-
We've got your dad like getting inside your head and telling
Yeah.
you to build do a distillery by not telling you to.
So
the Jedi mind
Jonathan,
trick.
Jonathan left out that what I think 5 years previous we were up in Spokane, Washington at a family reunion, and we went to a Thai food restaurant. And as we were leaving the Thai food restaurant in the same shopping center was Dry Fly Distilling.
Ah,
And so that was the very first distillery because we had been to wineries and breweries, and so we were like, hey, let's go visit a distillery. And they were just opening. I mean, they couldn't have been open that long when we visited. And that was kind of my dad joked that when we retired, that's what we should do. And so that's why he was like, well, you're just going to do it now and skip the whole, working and then retiring thing.
maybe I will.
Well, you kind of retired from law school.
I graduated. I finished law school. I just didn't do anything afterwards.
Take it. Take it.
But I bet that education comes pretty handy, right? Like with the whole.
Yeah.
All the legal stuff involved in starting a distillery, huh?
Yeah, being able to read, just even
Legal
go back to the
history.
code and stuff and being able to read it all and understand it and understand when
Contracts.
things are left out and all that fun
Or
stuff.
like Jonathan killed one of the employees. You could defend him.
That's
You
right.
could do that.
Let's safety
We
first.
would have to have employees first, Marty. That's the
Yeah.
first goal.
Well, that's it. Well, as far as we know, you
Details.
don't have any. But Jonathan could
Details.
have gone on a rampage.
So then what?
Good.
I'll go. Yeah. So basically, Robert studied as much on the distilling side about wanting to start a distillery as he did law that last semester. And I had pretty much decided at that dinner that I wanted to join Robert on this journey. But originally, we decided that I was going to kind of help on the weekends because I'd been trying to get a position at a company called Medtronic for a long time, and so I was finally offered an R&D engineering position in their powered surgical solutions division, which basically means we made drills and saws for neurosurgery. And I had been making saw blades and having a good time doing it. Yeah, so it was
Wow.
it was a dream job. And so, but the same week
Nightmare.
that
Sorry. Over the powered surgery idea.
it's necessary.
Oh yeah.
So, it's better than a fork and spoon, Lou.
Yeah, it's quicker than doing it by hand, I guess.
Basically, what ended up happening was I was offered a job at that point in time, and the same week, Robert decided that he was going to pull the trigger on the distillery thing, and had decided that it was probably beyond the scope of one person running the distillery. And so he kind of asked me if I wanted to join him on that. I knew I wanted to. I had to clear with my wife because I had my daughter was 9 months old at the time.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so she said okay. I don't know if she regrets it now, but she said okay at the time. So so that was it, and we were off and running. We were looking all around the DFW area for where we wanted to put the distillery. We kind of decided that we wanted to put it in Texas. So I was already back in Texas and Fort Worth at the time. Robert had grown up mostly in Texas, so we're very familiar with all the different parts of Texas and knew that DFW was where we wanted it.
Now, did you ever consider, since you guys have been in so many other states, you have lived in various parts of your life in so many
we
different
did
states?
we actually looked at the St. Louis area, but Jonathan's wife, in order to be able to get him to be able to do this, we had to go back to Texas. That was the deal to be able to do the whole
solid
thing.
negotiation. Yep, classic.
Yeah,
She chose
Why
the
we're
area.
here.
So, and during that period of time, you're talking, we were going basically to every single class we could get our hands on. We ended up going back to Dry Fly, doing the class they had out there, doing, the guys at Koval, they do a little class thing. That's where I met Paul Polenko for the first time, which it's funny seeing him now versus back there, back then when
he was just a struggling kid with a dream. Yeah.
With a label and a name. And then, and then we kind of ran into the guys down in Waco, Balcones, and Jared and Chip helped us out quite a bit and kind of teaching us a lot about what was going on in Texas. And then ultimately we ended up taking a brandy class from Hubert. And that's kind of where all of everything just started kind of clicking for us. Because when we started looking at Texas, we knew Texas presents a kind of an intense problem when it comes to aging spirits, that you pull tannins so quickly. And with the U.S. law as it is, you're dealing a lot with most spirit types are being in brand new casks. And the question was, how do you actually manage that to do longer term aging, and how do you play around with that? And really, that's how we fell in kind of with the love of the French style distilling and maturation methods, because the French are all about managing tannin on their maturation side. And so it kind of is two things that kind of fell into place, which led to us then going back to Denison, Texas, which is actually the city right next to where I went to undergrad at. But the city has kind of this really cool history that it's caused it to be sister cities with cognac. So we figured, if we're going to use French distilling methodology, why not be in the sister city of the cognac? And so
why? Tell them why, Robert. Okay. Why is it the sister distillery of the cognac?
And I have another question right after this. So just
wait, it's like 60 minutes.
I know. So back in the late 1800s, a gentleman who lived in Denison, Texas, his name is T.V. Munson. He was a viticulturist, and it was his kind of goal in life to figure out how to grow effectively European grapes, specifically French grapes, in the United States. And then he was also breeding grapes. I mean, they're still in our town a viticulture school, and they've got he developed over like 150 different varieties of grapes, which one of the craziest ones is actually called Green Giant, which the grape is literally like, it's almost grapefruit size. It's huge.
My God.
The seeds are also huge though in it. It's crazy. But sorry. Anyway, so we had this major issue in the U.S. that most of the European grapes don't have the resistance to all the plant diseases that exist in the U.S. And so when they plant the European grapes, they ran into a lot of disease issues and also like bug issues. Specifically, phylloxera was a major issue at the time, which is it's kind of a little aphid that attacks grape roots, and so. He discovered that there's a native Texas grape, while the grapes are absolutely terrible for wine production, are extremely resistant to phylloxera and also really drought resistant. They're really, really hardy. And it grows in similar pH soils as the French grapes. So he started doing experiments with grafting the different French varieties on top of these Texas grape roots. Lo and behold, he was able to start growing them. Around that same time period is when phylloxera got transferred from the U.S. over to Europe and kind of went to town. It was the fourth blight to hit France in as many years, and it ended up, I think, again, forgive me on the numbers, but it was 70 to 80% of the French grapes ended up getting kind of decimated. And so the French freaked out, kind of scoured the planet looking for solutions to this issue. And this weird guy.
That's almost as bad as a cheese plague, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And so TV Munson had been
cheese.
sending all this paperwork into the Smithsonian. And again, according to the Smithsonian, they didn't really do any research on grapes because there wasn't any like native U.S. grape production. So they kind of put it in a folder in a corner. When the French came, they just kind of handed them this folder. And next thing you know, they're talking to TV Munson. He's sending them Texas grapes. And to this day, a lot of those descendants of those grapes are what are they're grafted on for wine production over in France and in many parts of the world.
So that's why we call ourselves Ironroot Republic, is because we say the iron roots of Texas helped save the French wine industry.
Yeah.
So because of that, TV was named to the French Legion of Honor in the agriculture division, I guess. So before that, there were 6 Americans. There have been 6 Americans named to the French Legion of Honor, I believe. Three of them stopped the terrorist attack a few years ago on the train. Before that, it was TV Munson, Thomas Edison, and Dwight Eisenhower, who was also born in Denison, Texas. So every few years, in honor of that, we get the mayor of Cognac and a lot of the Cognac master distillers will come over. So over the 7 years that we've been there, we've had 3 or 4 different Cognac distillers actually come and visit us and hang out in our warehouse. We had Alexander Gabriel here earlier this year hanging out and tasting stuff and playing around in the barrel warehouse, which has been a lot of fun. And because of that, we've gotten the opportunity to actually go over there. So I've actually been over to France and distilled in Cognac, which I think we get the better end of the deal because they all have mansions and stuff and chateaus in France. And they come visit us. They stay at the Holiday Inn. So
Motel 6.
So
Motel 6. You call it with a French accent. It sounds better.
Holiday. Can you talk about where you're located? Would you consider that to be a microclimate, or can you talk a little bit more about the agronomics of your specific region? Because I know Syrah, certainly we talked about, obviously that's a huge thing for the wine industry, but can we talk about what that's like for you guys where you're located in Denison?
So, yeah, historically, it was a little bit different than it is currently. So when TV Munson was here, there was just the Red River, which were adjacent to the Red River, and it would overflow its banks kind of like the Nile. And so there's a kind of a subsection next to the river where it's what we call sandy loam soil. And so this was why TV Munson really wanted to grow grapes here. And so that region actually has its own wine appellation in Texas, which is fairly rare. But so that's historically what was going on in this region. Since then, in the 40s, they actually, as part of a works project, they put in a giant lake. It's called Lake Texoma. So this is a massive lake in between Texas and Oklahoma. And so that's kind of changed what's been going on here for a while, but now it changes our climate pretty drastically from what you see other places. So we catch kind of the tail end, a lot of the storms that come up, they go into Oklahoma. So you hear about Norman, Oklahoma getting hit with tornadoes. We see a lot of those systems. They're not quite big enough to really do much. When they come through here, but it's what goes up north to Norman at that point. So we get a lot of different shifts than you'd see, say, down in the hill country where Balcones is and Garrison Brothers. So it's pretty different. We have a lot more rain than they do typically.
Actually, you think you're saying that's the lake that's affecting that?
Well, just being that much farther north helps. But you on the as far as the lake, it actually changes the temperature that we see here. So fronts coming through, where we sit usually 5 to 10 degrees cooler than, say, if you go down to Dallas area, which is only an hour south of here. So it's a massive heat sink. So I actually live out by the lake, and when we first moved there, it was interesting to watch the big storms come in and then kind of break up when they hit the lake, and then kind of congeal into a heavier storm on the other side of the lake. And so it's kind of, we refer to it as a little God bubble. out there. So it's yeah.
According
true,
to
yeah,
Google,
just-
it's 89,000 acres. Is the size of the lake.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Google.
was
it's a big
just
lake.
talking to a guy today who was in Dallas, and it was 80 degrees. But I'm looking at the temperatures in Austin because I'm going down tomorrow for discus, and it's in the 90s. So you're
Yeah.
right, the whole 10-degree thing, crazy.
So sorry, just back to agriculture.
It's scientist stuff.
No, climate's good, but agriculture is important too.
That's kind of what we're getting at, right? Like whiskey is an agricultural product. So just circling back to that. So you probably see a lot less protein, right? In your grains that you're harvesting. You're predominantly harvesting corn and you're working with some interesting heirloom varietals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so a majority of the grains that we do use here is going to be a non-GMO yellow dent.
Okay.
Now a lot of what's grown in this area is actually GM corn. So we kind of have to search out the non-GMO varietals. And just on a short sidebar, the reason we like the non-GMO is because we've distilled both the GM corn and the non-GMO corn. And the non-GMO corn has a lot more complexity to it, a lot more flavor to it, whereas it seems like the GM corn is more just there to produce fuel at that point. So I think it's been modified specifically for that. And so we're not trying to get in a fight with either side of farmers on that, but basically the non-GMO corn has more flavor. Hands down, we've distilled it, we know. And so that's typically what we use. We also started having some of the Bloody Butcher corn grown in the same area as the yellow dent. A lot of the way we do things is we do a very high of the non-GMO yellow dent corn in our mash bills, so 95% of it in a lot of instances, and then just 5% of some of these other we use heirloom corns as flavoring grains, so I'll refer to them as such. So
yeah, very cool. Okay, awesome.
So
And it helps out just because of, we don't have to get hundreds and hundreds of acres of some of these heirlooms grown. Because again, we like to joke that, with some years, when we did the Green Oaxacan, we ended up having to pay like steak level prices for the Green Oaxacan corn, where it was
per pound,
$11 or $12 a pound, which makes a very expensive whiskey when you start playing around like that. So we do try to keep that in mind, but we do work with our local farmers and guaranteeing certain acreages every year and paying them for that. Just again, because with some of these heirlooms, you really don't know exactly what the yield, because they don't have, might not have the stock strength, and they get a wind gust and you lose part of the field to that. So we always like making sure that they're going to get paid no matter what happens at the end of the day.
right, with hogs love the heirlooms.
No, that's true. Yeah.
That's what they told me at Jeff the Creed. That's why they went to the Bloody Butcher, because the deer liked it. I mean, that's their story. So.
Mm-hmm. What is your evaporation rate like compared to some of the other guys? We had Dan and Charlie Garrison on a couple of weeks back, and they had
typically lower than theirs.
Right,
and part of it's a little bit different. So the way we fill barrels and the way we the size barrels that we're filling now is different than what they're doing. So they started out in smaller barrels down there at Garrison. We started at 53s originally, but we weren't doing an entire fill on it. We're doing only about an 80% fill on what we were doing. So
allows for a little bit more breathability with the barrel, but also, and as we get into élevage, it gives us space to add water back into the barrel during the aging process if we want to, or if the barrel needs it. So also playing with different barrel size also impacts that quite a bit between our 53s and the 63s.
You've been doing a lot of work in that space, though, right? If I'm not mistaken. So can you talk a little bit more about your dilution practices and what you found that works for you guys in your whiskeys?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really different about us that we've adopted from the French was the actual adding water during the maturation process. Now, a lot of times with the French, they pull the brandy out of cask, blend it together, water it down, put it back in cask, which obviously with bourbon, that would be very frowned upon by the definition of bourbon. So we hybridized the system a little bit, and instead of blending like years and groupings together, we do everything on individual barrel, which again you do see in France at times as well. And so what we'll do is we go through about every 3 to 4 months, we'll taste all the barrels that are over a year old, and we're going to start taking all of our tasting notes, start judging the barrels, how are they developing. Because again, as I mentioned in the beginning, our biggest concern is going to be tannin extraction. Is it pulling too much tannin too quickly, becoming too bitter, and especially on the outer parts of the warehouse? And so one of the ways that we manage that, one, you can move a barrel to the inner part of the warehouse, but we really prefer to leave the barrels kind of in their area. And so we'll actually drop proof in casks. We open it up. We've got essentially old water bottles that we've drilled hole in the cap. We fill them with RO water, and we actually will let our water slowly drip into the barrels. And so we'll slowly water them down. And so during the aging process, generally, I mean, if something's becoming too bitter, too spicy, you're getting a lot of cinnamon and those side of notes, we'll generally drop it. Sometimes we'll drop it from the 122 proof all the way down to 110, 112. Sometimes we'll leave it up a little bit higher, just depending on how drastic that is. Because we still want the barrels to extract at their same rates, but we just kind of want to shift what they're extracting out of the barrel and get that tannin time to soften.
You say you drip it in. I'm sorry if it. Do you do any agitation, or do you just let it drip? And
other than again we have used, I guess the Kentucky they call it whiskey, like a whiskey dog, where it drops it in and it kind of plunges through. We'll do that a couple times after we add the water, just to kind of move it through and make sure when we're pulling, we're getting an accurate pull out of the barrel. Because that's the other concern, is if you don't get a good pull, you can not have a good idea what's going inside the barrel.
Gotcha. Sorry, Liz. Go ahead.
No, it's okay, because I'm finally circling back to my thought I had earlier when we were doing intros. And my question was European or French oak versus American oak, right? Obviously has a lot of different tannin, there's different tannin levels. French oak obviously has much more higher tannin levels than American oak. So just wanted to kind of talk about that point. And you're using American oak, or what?
Oh, yeah. We use all three technically, most prevalently American and Euro. And the reason we started using European oak originally was because when we first started, what ended up happening was it was in the middle of the barrel shortage. Oh. And so we couldn't get American oak. And so we kind of went to them and said, hey, if we buy these really expensive European oak barrels, can we get a couple of American on the side? And once you're on the customer list, you can kind of order whatever you want. And so it's kind of a workaround. But inadvertently, we actually paired up and did kind of a shotgun approach originally with our different mash bills. And so we found that certain mash bills actually pair very well with the European oak.
Okay.
So, and that's
especially some of the sweeter heirlooms, it tends to add that kind of structure and spice that you need to kind of balance out the spirit a little bit. We play along. We initially played around a lot with char levels and toast levels, but we settled in. I think almost everything we order now, we do char 1 with some sort of toast profile. So we tend to really, really favor char 1, which again, in the weirdos, brandy people we come from, we prefer that lower char level with our spirits.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, you it's not like you have any awards to show for that. So.
Yeah, obviously not working.
Yeah, you guys just recently, who gave you this recent one? You got, it was just on the ADI newsletter. You got awarded another.
This is USA Today, Craft Distiller of the Year. You had ADI gave us the Bubble Cap Award this year, which is really cool because I remember like sitting with Marty the first time we ever saw that given out, which was fun. And then
I told him to give it to you this year.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thanks, Marty.
Power I wield.
Just so we can talk about it today on the show. It's all about the show. Just to let you know.
I thought, oh my God, what if we run out of topics? Hey, give him an award.
Give him an award.
Let's do it. Yeah. But we've been very fortunate on the award front. Yeah.
About your distillery in general, could you give us a description? Like I said, I want to go visit it this week, but you're kind of far away from Austin. by about 4 hours. What's do you have a visitor center? You do. I know you do. But how big is it? And do you guys get people flocking to Denison?
Yeah, we do. I think we're booked out on tours usually about 2 months in advance, typically right now.
Whoa.
We still do, like, again, anybody's welcome to stop by the distillery and taste stuff all the time. And generally, if you show up, we're going to let you go in and see the distillery and see everything. But just like the full formal tours at the moment, I guess they're probably about 2 months out.
And how many people on a tour?
We do generally about 12 people on a tour.
Okay.
Lou and I are
So,
talking about doing the
more intimate.
Texas Distillery trail, and we're going to put Liz in the trunk.
Wait,
Bring
so
her along. Because,
Liz, he's
wants
got
to
me
come
on the
along.
roof. It's a really small car.
It's
Yeah.
a coupe.
You'd probably rather be on the roof than in the trunk, though. Just
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just
if we're talking logistics,
you can sit up there,
more
in the
room on the
lotus
roof.
position, just tie her up, make sure she's strapped on. You all right up there, Liz? Great. Boys, why don't we go through all your whiskeys? Because you have on your website, you have about 6 or 8.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not very good at counting. I'm pretty sure you have 6 different whiskeys that we know of.
Ooh, that is true.
Because you are
Yeah.
incredibly famous for being secretive.
When you're on here with, with
It
me,
is a
Marty,
ginger
Liz,
trait.
let's,
Once again, gonna bring that
let's
up.
get this out here.
That's
you know,
right.
You gotta
I'm
spill some
gonna-
stuff.
I'm going to crack open the samples you sent me. Oh, yeah, it didn't send me any samples. All right.
You said you're coming to pick them up, and then you're not coming.
Ooh. Oh.
are
Well
both,
played, sir.
but Lou and Marty, are you both going to Discus this week? Is that
I'm not-
No, just me.
No.
okay? All right. Anyway,
This
whiskey
is
is
at a time in the future.
Yeah, let's go through these.
okay. Just to be clear, I was like, do I need to pack a bag? I was like, is this happening like
Let's
tomorrow?
go. Let's do this thing.
This time. This is something that Lou and I have talked about for, I think, almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
About doing the trail down there. Let's go through these. Yeah, I'm looking. I don't. These names are a little scary.
Oh, look, he's got
Harbinger?
whiskey right there. Awesome.
Jonathan, you've got the new fancy labels with you.
Yeah, this is here.
Get that
Take that
thing.
off so you can see.
Nope. There he goes.
Yeah.
That-
Whoa, there we go.
Back it
Oh, I
up.
like that diagonal. That's nice.
I can't do this. Hey, there. Yeah, that's
Harbinger.
it.
Doesn't that sound? That sounds like harbinger of death. I mean, what's harbinger mean?
Yeah, I got a little bit of a dark sense of humor. So that's yeah.
We're in for it.
Lean into
So-
it, man.
Your new release is just called Ironroot Serial Killer.
Big bloody butcher.
The Bloody Butcher.
Oh, jeez.
We didn't get the website yet, Marty. Way to screw it up.
Yeah, jeez.
We're all
all right.
some gems.
So go through there. I mean, because you have a number of bourbons. How do they
And
differ?
corn whiskeys. I want to hear about them.
So a lot of what we do is blend heavy on the backside. So we have 4 core mash bills, Marty. So and 3 of those are 100% corn. And of those, there's one that has 5% purple corn in it, one that has 5% bloody butcher corn in it, and one that has 5% flint corn in it, a type of flint corn called Floriani flint corn. And then the last one has a little bit of rye in there. And so if we distill everything off, barrel it separately, and come back in the blends, typically on the Harbinger set of things, there's the Harbinger, which I just showed you a bottle of, that's 115 proof, and then a 90 proof version of it. So those tend to have more of the purple corn and the bloody butcher corn in barrels in the blend. So if we,
Is the XC the 90?
Yes.
yes, sir, that's
Yeah.
Roman numeral for 90.
Good on.
Yeah.
I forgot my old Roman Legion days. Now you also do an American whiskey,
Esoteric. Yes.
the esoteric.
Now, our version of American whiskey is to take corn whiskey and bourbon and mix them together. So both basically virgin barrels and then used cask on them. So.
And
So
what's
the
your
other thing,
percentage?
Jonathan, tell them about what you do with it, though. It's kind of a bastardized Solera, that particular product.
Yeah, so we put together, originally I put together a fairly large blend of it, and then I put half of that back in barrel. We released back in 2018. It was the first batch that we released out into market, and then we left it back in barrel because it's American whiskey. It's kind of the Wild West. We can do what we want. So, so we left that in barrel.
I'm shocked more people don't.
I know.
Because I think most consumers don't know, so screw it. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, but
I don't.
We talked about this a little bit last week when we had Josh on about this new category where we think it's going to be an exciting, innovative category is just American blended whiskey. But what does your consumer education look like? Is that tricky or?
American whiskey is trickier, which is why it's going to be a smaller part of what we do, just because it is way more education heavy. I mean, between American whiskey and blended bourbon, they're very much consumer education based, which it also makes it a lot of fun because when we bring it out, it's always the one that no one expects to like it as much as they do. Because again, when we start talking with ours, the latest batch of Esoteric had stuff that was over 6 years old. Technically, is the oldest liquid actually in there. And so when you start playing around with some of this, people don't expect to like it and really enjoy it. But it's, again, that's where a lot of our experimental corns go too every year. So because we distill 3 or 4 different heirlooms every year that mom grows, or we have someone else grow for us, and we have some fun with. And so a lot of times that's where it ends up.
Yeah, down at the old speech pathologist farm.
Yeah.
Some we've got
corn's very articulate.
Yes.
Corn is very articulate.
It can speak for itself.
Speaking of articulation, I'm actually very curious. I've never worked with purple corn, but can you kind of talk to what sort of attributes or agronomics or anything about the purple corn? Because I'm very curious.
I want to know about the green Oaxacan. And I'm completely serious because I saw it up at Dancing Star, Robert McDonald's place in Pennsylvania. And I've just been, because I forget to ask him about it. I'll admit that. And ever since then, it's been bugging the crap out of me. Like, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so as far as the purple corn, that one originated in the Andes Mountains. It's typically been a higher elevation corn when it's grown. So we get ours out of, I think it's Minnesota.
Isn't that where the purple potatoes come from?
Although we do have a batch coming from just south of us this year, Jonathan, in Princeton.
I think the purple potatoes are also like high Andes.
Sounds about right.
That's kind of weird. Sorry, I just,
Those anthocyanins, I know, right?
I know they like high altitudes.
Please continue.
It's one of the first things you learn about them.
So basically it's because of the anthocyanin, it's considered some sort of health food. Pretty much by the time we get done with it, they're not there anymore. So
not healthy at all.
It's regular healthy whiskey. But the reason we really like that one in particular is because of the flavor profile for it. It has some darker fruits to it. It's got a little bit of the baking spice. That's one that we particularly pair with that European oak. And that's one we've been doing from, I think it was like our 3rd distillation had the purple corn in there. And so third, 4th, but it was, so we've been using it for a long time. It's probably the one we produce the most of. So for one of the other whiskeys we have on that list is called Hubris, which is a corn whiskey, which that's exclusively the purple corn mash bill. Oh, wow.
Nice.
Throwback. So that's specifically the purple corn mash bill in Euro Oak, but it's used Euro Oak from Harbinger is what it is. So
holy shit.
I like the names. The names you've selected for your whiskey are so sophisticated and
Robert makes fun of me all the time.
Well, Esoteric, I think, is the funniest just because, the reason is because someone asked us what the mash bill is. It's been Solaried now, so your guess is good as mine.
It's a secret.
Percentages.
We don't really know.
Super secret.
I'm interested in your collaboration with Berry Brothers and Rhoades over in Scotland. The folks who, I don't know if they still own it. I don't know if they sold Glenrothes, but they created Glenrothes single malt. Wow. So you already have something bottled. It is.
This is batch 1. There's already been batch 2 of it.
You know what? I've never received a bottle,
Yeah.
so.
Dude,
It's right here,
received
Marty.
anything,
You had to come get it. Remember?
I'll say I'll see you this week in Texas.
All right, I'll have your bottle for you.
But how did that come about? I mean, was that one of your trips over to the UK? You ran into them and you guys started talking? Because this was a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing, the wheel started turning, right?
You want to do this one, Rob?
Again, it's up to you, brother.
Go ahead.
You want to do it? All right.
Hey,
So
brothers.
the story begins with Jonathan's the one who culls the info account from the website, all the emails, and one of the emails we got, I want to say it was back in 2016. I want to say we got it like Christmas of 2016. Was an email from Berry Brothers and Rudd, and it was an email stating, "Hi, we're Berry Brothers and Rudd. We've got this very unique history that's associated with Texas and the fact that our second floor was used for the Texas legation when Texas had an embassy in England. And as for that, they've got a plaque on the side of their building. And to honor that, they were wanting to release a true Texas whiskey. And so they're reaching out to all the distilleries to send samples in. And so this is prior to us actually releasing whiskey. So one, we were like, how the heck do we even know we even make whiskey? And the answer to that, I think, is we were on the ADI list as a whiskey distillery. So I think that's how they ended up doing it. But at the time, Jonathan brings this to me, and he forwards it to me. He's like, I think this is one of those like Nigerian prince scams of someone just trying to get free whiskey.
For distillers. It's very specific scam.
So I Googled it, and I was like, well, it's at bbr.com. So I was like, okay, well, I guess it's really a thing. So we're like, shoot, why not? Who knows? I don't know. We like our whiskey. Maybe it's good. I don't know. So we sent samples over there, and it was about 4 or 5 days later. I was the only one at the distillery, and I get this phone call, and I answer it on our main line, which was awful at the time because whoever installed the phone line did a very terrible job. So it was kind of scratchy, but it was, on the other side was this guy with a very thick Scottish accent, and it was just all I could get from it was someone that was really excited. And I was like, hello?
What's he? Hey, come let for the whiskey.
And it ended up being Doug McIver on the on the phone, calling to tell us that they've been searching for Texas whiskey for 5 years, and he'd finally found it, the one that he wanted to play with. So he goes, "Is your family there?" And I was like, "No, they'll be back in, I think, an hour or something like that." And he's like, "I'll call you back in an hour," and calls me back. Jonathan's there, and he goes, "All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to immediately go to these barrels, pull these samples, and make this blend right now." And so we went and did it, and we're like, "Yeah, man, this is really good." And he's like, "I know, it's amazing. We'd like to buy it and start this whole project, which is the Texas Legation Project." And so kind of how that started. So we ended up sending like 40 or 50 barrels over in total between batch 1 and batch 2. And then the tariffs hit, and we paused the program because, again, it makes it very difficult to make profits at that 50% tariff or whatever it was, 25%. And so then recently, since they've been repealed, we've sent over a few more barrels over there for some special release stuff that I don't know what the plans are to release or when they want to, but I don't know. It's kind of fun, kind of a really fun project. But we got to go over there and do the release. Yeah.
There's a real odd connection between Scotland and Texas. I was staying in a hotel in Aberdeen, and behind the front desk were 2 clocks, and one was Aberdeen time and one was Houston time. And then right after that very trip, I came down. I went down to Houston to visit my sister, and there was a bunch of guys in kilts standing on the corner. I just thought, oh, Jesus Christ. But I mean, the oil connection between, that's a big industry in Scotland and obviously Texas. But it's fascinating that there is this really kind of close tie between, 2 parts of the world I would never have associated together. Never heard John Wayne.
It's just because Houston and Austin sound close. Is that what you're driving at, or?
No, what are you talking about?
No? Oh, I thought you were okay. Sorry, I thought you were. I don't know.
No,
Nothing. Never mind.
no, just Texas in general, not
Okay.
Austin specifically.
Okay. All right.
Texas, because of oil.
Yes.
Oil, there's a very big
Oil.
connection, but also too, obviously floors. Texas floors in their, what was it? In their, didn't you say their floor was made of some kind of Texas, bunch of dead Texans or something? The Alamo?
I mean,
What?
Yeah.
sure, why not, Marty? Yeah.
Yeah. There you
Liz,
go.
Liz, now would be a good time for one of those.
A
Ewings?
little
Moments.
bring her back in. Bring her back. Here's we had quite a few comments in the chat box. Awesome. Brad, hey, thank you for joining us once again. We had
From
Mark.
Panama.
Yeah, Brad.
Panama.
Mark, we had some. I think this is our first time. Maybe we've had someone from Korea. Boys,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
yeah, Mark. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Cool.
Patrick says greetings from Louisville, of course, always with the Louisville crowd. Dave says hello from Northern Illinois. I love that. Northern Illinois, I miss you. Michael says cheers from Atlanta, and OJ Lima says hello
From
and
Peru.
from Peru.
I'm just guessing because the name was Lima.
I don't know. I don't know.
There's one in Ohio, you know.
Lima, Ohio, Peru, almost the same climate.
Brad chimed in about what we were talking about earlier with the tie into Denison about saving French viticulture. And he also said he went to Grayson County College and studied viticulture and enology.
Oh, that's
hey.
Will. Yeah,
It's real.
Will.
Yeah.
Will.
Oh, that was
So-
Will.
Yeah.
Will,
Oh, he added. Oh,
No,
it is Brad.
No, I think it's Brad.
Yeah, that was Brad. That was
Yeah,
Brad.
that's Brad.
That's totally Brad.
Will.
Kind of crazy. They've built a distillery at Grayson College, and so they're starting up a distilling program there as well right now.
Jesus Christ. It's
Yeah.
becoming a
Awesome.
full-blown
Who's it?
thing.
Everybody's doing it. It's awesome.
Who's leading up
Everybody's
the program?
distilling.
Jonathan, what's the professor? He's the wine professor is the one leading it up because they're
Anders Schneider.
He's doing a lot of. They're working on again to do stuff for port and sherry production and that type of stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, super love that. I know I actually just purchased a new textbook and I'm excited because there's a lot of activity at Oregon State University happening as well. And there was some articles in the textbook from them. So really excited about what the future holds in our industry. Education. Yes, let's have more of it.
Spreading it around.
Brad also said, Marty, are you driving a two-door spec?
Am I who? Are you driving a two-door spec?
So we're
I
talking
assume it's a small car. I don't know.
We're talking
It's
about
very it's in fact I think
It
it's
is close.
considered a classic now. Honda Fit Sport. I believe this is the last year they're making them. So
awesome. Well, I am definitely not driving in the tour because I drive a two-door Mini, so that's I don't think is going to be a feasible
Not
situation.
gonna work.
It's not going to work.
you and I would have to be up on the roof.
We would really have to get the roof rack, installed. Let's see. Blake Grundy says, I can't wait for Apotheosis to finally hit. Is that a new whiskey hitting?
It
It's a
is.
new album.
That is the Jonathan's newest album, as we like to call it. So that is our bourbon that it was a 3-year-old bloody butcher corn bourbon that we've been finishing in Armagnac cask for the last almost 2 years now. So
Is that what you were talking about before, Jonathan? The you had coming out?
No,
No, you got
that's
something
different
else.
than what I was talking about. Yeah. So we've
So
got
what is that?
so as far as the other project, that's a whole nother brand that we started recently called Saint Sally. And so we like blending our own whiskey all the time. And so we have a had a lot of fun on the blending side. And we wanted to kind of expand that into doing other things. So we actually started a project in which we bring in some MGP, age it up in Texas for a bit, blend some of our stuff into it, and then finish it in different finishing casks. And so I was really interested in doing that because everything we have here is going to be a pot still. We have some that have some columns on, but they're all technically pot stills. And so I really wanted to run some continuous column whiskey and blend it with some of our pot still distillate. And so kind of more like you'd see in the Caribbean a lot of times. We've got something a little bit higher, a little more rectification on it, and then something that's a little bit more dirty, for lack of a better term. Yeah, and so I've been wanting to do that for a while, and so this kind of gave me the ability to do that. So we tapped one of our buddies down here in the Dallas area by the name of Chris Trevino. He's on YouTube. He goes by the Liquor Hound. He has a massive whiskey collection, and he's been drinking bourbon for a long time. And so we wanted to bring him in because we wanted to kind of bring some of the old flavors back from bourbon that you used to see. And but still keep things moving forward and kind of into a new product and kind of something new, something fresh they haven't seen before. So that was really where we were heading with that one. So we initially we called it Saints Alley because we have a building downtown Denison, and the alley behind it is Saints Alley because it backs up to all the churches in town. And so sounded like a great name to me. And then we ended up calling. What was originally the original concept was the Armagnac finished one. It's called the Herald, and that's because that building used to be the Herald Democrat building downtown. And it kind of played nicely as it was more of like the positive harbinger.
Yeah, right.
So we like that. There's also one called the Heretic. That's a French rum finish on that one. And I'm just not a huge fan of rum finishes on whiskey typically. And so it was kind of where something I said it should be like a forbidden area. You shouldn't be done. And so we called it the Heretic on that one. But then the one that's going to be the flagship for it is going to be something that has both port and cognac on the finish for it. And that one's going to be just called Saints Alley. That one's at a little bit lower proof. But so we released those recently. And it was, like I said, it was kind of fun for us to get to do something a little bit different than what we typically do. It gives us something that we can expand a little bit more quickly. So because we're not as limited on the column distillate as we are on our own. So.
Cool.
Well, if folks are interested, this is a cool book. I just got it recently, by Nico Martini, Texas Whiskey, which Jonathan gives forth. He has a whole article in here about grain. Plus, I didn't notice it at first, but they do go through each one of your whiskeys, kind of giving all the vitals right over here, little vitals. So, I mean, really, this is a great little guide. I'd like to see them do this for every state, actually. That'd be kind of neat. Of course, 50 books. That's heavy.
A lot of books.
But I mean, that said,
good luck selling
folks
that.
are looking to find out more about Ironroot Republic Distilling.
Then you should come visit our website or our Facebook page.
The website,
or join
which
our
I believe is
newsletter.
below. It should be below, right?
Yeah.
I really do believe that there is a green rectangle with a little link.
Liz, for some reason, has access to everything. We don't.
Yeah, but it's okay. Speaking of
Because
access,
Liz takes the trouble to see what other people are seeing.
Yes.
So she can serve them better.
That's why she's a scientist.
speaking of access and serving everyone's needs, there were quite a few questions about distribution. Can we talk about that?
So we're distributed throughout Texas through Southern Glazers. So we hit all the major chains and everything in Texas. Outside of Texas, a few years ago, we decided to do the Spirits Direct program through Total Wine. So basically, we're available at Total Wines nationwide.
I've purchased through Total Wine. I can confirm.
Yeah.
New Jersey.
Yep.
Have it.
Unfortunately, Harbinger ended up winning a major award. So then the stocks got drained much faster. So it's hit and miss of when it's available and when we can actually get stuff to new states. We're working on it. Jonathan is currently chained to the still, so he will not be leaving anytime soon. So we're working on getting more stuff out there. We've doubled essentially availability over the last couple of years, and that looks like it's going to continue over the next couple more, just to try to catch up with everything. So soon we'll hit more broader distribution, but that's for the moment where we're limited to.
So real quick,
I'm sorry, I'm just serving someone's need here because there was a question. Illinois, Benny's, are we?
We're not in Benny's. The only location in Illinois we're in is in Edwardsville, which is a Total Wine in Edwardsville, Illinois.
That's Fairview Heights.
Louis, or I thought it was Edwardsville. Is it?
Fairview Heights in Illinois.
It's near St. Louis. It's one of those.
Yeah.
It's not Belleville or O'Fallon. Where's it, O'Fallon? I don't know.
No, it's
Okay.
But not Benny's, which is a giant vacuum that would use up all your inventory.
yeah, well, kind of. I mean,
Kinda.
Brett will typically, if he won't put it in all his stores.
Mm.
Not unless he thought all various locations would sell it, or it would sell there. So he might pick and choose, like just city locations. But real quick, going back to your awards, this is a topic that was brought up, and in fact, Lew, I thought you and I were even going to discuss this at one point. I thought we were going to maybe make it a topic of the show. It's just and the benefit. Some people think, because there's more and more of these awards,
and which competitions you want to enter and which ones you don't.
Right. But so it's benefited you guys to some degree, but do you find it benefits depending upon which competition you're entering?
100%. We used to enter basically all the things that we could to get our name out there as much as we could. And in more recent years, we've really dialed that back to just doing 2 or 3 awards. And again, the ones just putting it out there in the world that we've seen that tend to resonate the most and get the most traction are the ones we try to go to. So stuff like San Francisco, for good or worse, does get a lot of press coverage. Whiskey Magazine's the World Whiskey Awards. That was the one that Harbinger ended up winning Best Bourbon. And I can tell you that I got a phone call from Total Wine the next day asking me what the hell happened because it just disappeared. Our 4-month allocation was gone in a week. So it's something I didn't expect to say. And we've won Best Corn Whiskey. Again, corn whiskey is, the redhead stepchild of the whiskey world to begin with, which is tragic. And it's someday I want to change that. But
you want to change that status, or you want to change that phrase about redheaded stepchild?
I want to change the status of corn whiskey. You can hate on redheads all you want. We're still here, still kicking. No, but the corn whiskey, and again, Jonathan and I can go into Icarus and all the crazy things we've done with corn whiskey over the years, just because it's fun to play around with corn whiskey, and there's so much you can do with it that doesn't get taken advantage of enough. But that's my soapbox on that. But on the awards, that one in particular, and then obviously bourbon being the in vogue spirit at the moment, I think bourbon and rye, if you win one of those major categories, to me, either one of those awards, you tend to then show up in Forbes, and it shows up in all the things. And it was amazing to me about how far and wide they were able to distribute that message. And it's, again, as we all know, that award shows can be a little bit of any given Sunday sometimes because it's where it is in the flight. And there's a lot of things that impact how tasting and awards go. But for us, it changed our stuff for us overnight, just entering and doing that, which for us was amazing that it had that much strength and potential behind it.
Yeah, I think it is almost as effective as having Fred Minnick say it's not bad.
Yeah. Almost, not quite. But yeah.
Boom.
Can I ask?
It is amazing when you get I always look at these competitions as it is advertising for you. It's if you win and if you at least get gold. I always think when you win silver, I say you don't have to advertise that because that's really
And
coming in
I'll say even like
staring
for us, gold,
Yeah.
double gold, none of that really makes a difference. It's if you win or not is where you're really going to
Wow.
see a difference in sales. Like
Wow.
that is really where you could do well at any of these shows and get double golds. No
But
one really
best
cares
of is
about
where
that.
you want to be.
Yeah, if you win best of, then that's when things actually change and happen.
Oh wow.
Okay, so we're running out of time, but I had a real quick question. And Lew, I think maybe you're a great person to answer the question. In terms of whiskey shows and whiskey award shows, I'm relating back to GABF, right? And style guidelines, right? How much of that is a part of the whiskey world, or is it more based on hedonics?
It is still, I think, largely being set by the individual competitions.
Okay.
Is that?
No, that's a fair answer. I'm just thinking about innovation, right? And how much is going on in the whiskey space about breaking down category, this isn't a specific profile anymore. There's so much innovation happening. And so I'm wondering how that's trickling back to awards.
Well, to go back to the GABF comparison, I have to keep in mind that some of the GABF categories exist, so there's awards. And I mean,
it's a new category this year.
And it's constantly fluctuating because some categories go away. When they don't make beers like that anymore, they shut down the category. Although it apparently takes a lot, because I understand there were a couple categories that had like 4 entries. But you probably didn't judge those because they needed 2 people. No, I just think that whiskey categories are kind of like feeling their way to that.
Okay.
So some of it, and you guys,
You
some of your whiskeys won in age awards, right?
I think, you see age awards, you see people are trying to wrap their heads around it. And I think with bourbon is the one that's been the hardest thing for a lot of the craft distilleries to really break into, because predominantly on the craft side, we're using pot stills, which inherently creates a very different spirit with very different characteristics than traditional column still distillate. And I think it's been just even a fight with consumers, just be like, it's okay for the whiskey to have these flavors and it to be outside of the normal flavor wheel of bourbon. And I think over the last 3 years, we've really seen just the acceptance in consumers of being willing to, I really love those flavor profiles that aren't necessarily Kentucky style bourbon. And it's okay. Some of those things that they thought a lot of people think are young or not correctly cut whiskey, it's not that, they're just not used to some of the ester profiles coming off of pot stills. And we
need another show on this, don't we?
Hey, great news. We're going to actually continue this conversation next week. We're going to talk about more craft Texas whiskey. I really would love to continue this conversation. We're going to have Jared Hempstead at Balcones is going to be joining us next.
The Daniel Day-Lewis of distilling,
Yes!
as far as I'm concerned. He looks just like Daniel Day-Lewis. He doesn't.
Acting is impeccable. Yes.
Well, he's doing character research right now. When he comes out of retirement, he's doing There Will Be Whiskey. Will be his next book.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you guys this afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And like I mentioned, Jared Hempstead, Balcones, Texas next week. So come back, join us.
Bring out more Texas. All right, Jonathan, Robert, you guys.
Thanks,
be good.
guys.
Everybody out there, have a great week.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.
Cheers.